Okay, I think we'll get started. Welcome everybody to this session. We're excited to have Lion Van Voris here to kick off this segment. And as you can see, the title is Building Institutional Customer Knowledge with Domo. We will do the presentation and then hold a short Q&A at the end. So if you can hold your questions until then, please welcome Lion.
All right, now I'm on. Everybody hear me? Well, thank you everybody for coming. Appreciate the introduction, Dave. This is my second year coming to Domopalooza, first year standing up here. And one of my favorite things from last year and that I'm already getting this year is just seeing all the different stories, all the different ways that people are using Domo and using the data from their businesses to run their businesses better. And I think that idea of story is something that I'm gonna key on in my talk today, because I think data, when it's used well in a business, is really, really powerful as a storytelling tool. So I'm here to talk about how we've used Domo in my business, which is the Predictive Index, to better understand our customers, their situations, their stories, and what we can do better to help them out. So first, a little show of hands. Who here has heard of the Predictive Index? All right, you work here, Maribel, so that doesn't count, but for everybody else who doesn't, our business is helping other companies better understand their people so they can better align their people strategy and their people goals with their businesses. So how does this happen? If you have interacted with PI before, it likely came in the form of one of our assessments. So the first level of our business is collecting a lot of data on people. So one of the primary tools we use is our behavioral assessment, which measures people's underlying behavioral drives and motivations. So the reason this is helpful is that the more you can put people into roles in your business that better align with their kind of natural way of being, the more they'll succeed at their job and the more your business will thrive as a whole. Here's an example. So say you want to go and talk to somebody, talk through an idea with somebody. Some people naturally really appreciate a lack of structure and like freedom, and they'd probably like it if you walked over to their desk and kind of knocked on it and said, hey, you want to talk through this idea right now? And they'd love that. Whereas somebody else might really like structure and predictability and is very detail focused, and they would appreciate it if you sent them a calendar invite a week in advance with everything all spelled out and an agenda and action items, right? So the more you can understand where they're coming from, the better that interaction's gonna go. So on top of that layer of data, which also includes cognitive and engagement assessments, among others, we have a full software as a service platform where people can run reports and look up their people, send assessments, do all sorts of things like that. And then on top of that, we also have a full network of licensed partners who sell PI for us and serve and carry out a number of different workshops and trainings and offer consulting services to help people integrate our product into their businesses. So as you can see, there's a lot of different touch points. We have a very kind of multifaceted product that people use in a number of different ways. And now, who are our clients? And I'm going through this because it is sort of relevant to my talk, so allow me to give a little bit of background. We have clients, because our kind of general value add is we're helping people understand their people better so that they can run their business better. We have a lot of people who are interested in that across a wide variety of industries. We have people in more than 90 countries. We have clients that are fewer than 50 people in their organization and more than 100,000. So while everybody is in the same business, they all want to, understand their people better and work better with them. How that manifests itself is very different, right? A 50-person startup that's trying to grow rapidly while maintaining their culture is going to have very different talent needs and talent goals than a 50,000-person multinational that has just made an acquisition, is trying to integrate a new team, right? So it's really, really important for us to understand where our customers are coming from. A little bit about my background. I started at PI about 2 years ago as a product manager. So I was really, really focused on our clients, but I was really focused on them in the context of them as software users, right? I was using Domo. We started a little bit after I joined the company, we started using Domo. So I was in there almost from the beginning, but I was primarily looking at our usage data, right? I was thinking about which flows were working, which pages people were visiting, right? Where they were clicking around. But that was pretty much my only focus. About a year ago, I switched into a broader role that we call product operations manager. So instead of being responsible for taking the needs of our customers and our other stakeholders and transmitting it to the engineering team so that they could build a solution, my new responsibility was taking all the information, all the data we're collecting from all of our different product tools, all of our different systems, kind of condensing it, distilling it, and then pushing it back out to people to help them make better decisions. And so as I started talking with people around the business, trying to figure out what they needed, what they wanted, I started realizing that my kind of experience as a product manager of having this really focused look was not unique, right? Everyone had their different systems, was collecting a lot of data, and were building these really detailed stories, but they were focusing on their specific product or on their specific kind of company function. So for example, our workshop team are really, really dedicated to providing the best training materials they can, but they were really focusing on, somebody from when they signed up to when they gave them their feedback form, and that was kind of the span of life they were worried about, right? We weren't really taking our customers and tracking them from when they first interacted with us and being able to tell that whole story all the way through. And this brings me to kind of my main metaphor of my talk. So who here is familiar with the myth of the blind man and the elephant? All right, we got a couple. So this is a really old story. I believe it originated in India thousands of years ago. And the myth goes that there's a group of blind men who are told that this thing called an elephant has arrived. And they've never seen an elephant before, right? Well, they've never interacted with an elephant before. And so they all go down to check it out. And each of the men go up to the elephant and touch a different part of it, right? So one of the men is touching the elephant's leg and feels this, rough kind of column-like thing and is like, hey guys, I think this is like a giant tree. It's some sort of new tree, right? Another man grabs the elephant's trunk and is like, no, dude, you're wrong. I think it's like a big kind of snake, a big serpent, right? And then chaos ensues as they argue over whose interpretation is correct. Never mind that they're all kind of right in their own individual ways. And so the moral of the story is that people have a tendency to really focus on their own experiences, their own kind of interactions with something, and ignore other people's at the expense of a more complete understanding. And to me, this really echoes how I think we were understanding our customers, right? We had these really detailed stories of different parts of the customer journey, but they weren't getting connected. We weren't able to pull them all together into one view. And that gets me to my first main takeaway, which is that, and this goes beyond Domo, I think, but when you think about Domo, I think what's been really valuable is using it as a tool to think about the customer holistically. I think back to an example of when I was a product manager. I was going to be getting on a call with a client later that day to talk about a feature in the software that they hadn't been adopting, that they hadn't been using. And so prior to this call, I went into Domo and looked up a bunch of stuff around how, what features they were using, what feedback they'd given before, right? A lot of product-centric data. And then at lunch, I just happened to be sitting next to the client success manager who was responsible for that client. I mentioned I was getting on this call, and I was given a whole story of, everything that they knew, what their business was doing, what their problems had been, in training, what things that they were worried about, in terms of adoption throughout the organization. And with all this information, I went into that call and was able to, really focus my questions and focus my conversation on what mattered to them. I came out of it with much better information, a much better of an understanding of how we could fit our product into what they were doing. And I think they came out of it with a much more of a sense of feeling understood and that we were a partner in the exchange. And so when I moved into my new role, I decided I wanted to take that experience, that understanding of knowing the customer's full story and try to make it scalable, right? Try to push it out to everybody using the data that we were already pulling into Domo. Because it wasn't necessarily scalable for me to go up to the client success manager every time I wanted to, know about a client and badger them for information, nor was it feasible for them to come to me every time they wanted to know what their clients were doing. And so the way we kind of started doing this is what we've called our company metadata set. And so this is a one-stop shop. This is one data source that we've pulled together that contains ideally every kind of main piece of information you want to know about a company. And so it starts off with just pulling individual fields from a number of different data sources. And that on itself is really valuable. That's sort of the base level of Domo, right? It's taking all these different things and putting them together. But what's been really valuable is the compound metrics that we've been able to pull together that we wouldn't have been able to get from any one place alone. So I want to draw your attention to the bottom left there, that T30 $/HP number, right? Who here knows what that means? All right, one person. If you ask anybody in our company, they'd be able to tell you exactly what that is and why it's important. And I'll get to exactly what it is right now. So we had the problem of trying to get a sense of how much value our clients were getting from our software platform. That's not unique to us. I think that's what every product team is trying to figure out. Are these things helping them? Are people who use them more likely to stay with us? And the problem we were having is that our software platform is not really where the work where the value we're providing is happening, right? We give people information, and then they take that information into their interviews, into their one-on-ones with their managers, and that's where the value happens. So just measuring how often somebody's logging in wasn't quite getting there. What we wanted to do was take a measure of how valuable each individual event in the software was and weight them so that the things that provided a ton of information about a person were weighted heavily, whereas something like going in and changing your username or replacing, changing some setting would be given no value. So by attaching our specific weights to the events, we get this kind of sum of units of value that a company has accrued over the last month. And this is helpful, but in order to be able to compare companies of different size, we took the contract data we have from Salesforce and divided that value by the amount of literally dollars that they were paying us to get their value, how much they were paying for each unit of value. And the way this is valuable is, I'm saying value a lot, but the way that this is helpful for them, or for us, is a company that goes in all the time, is generating a ton of reports, and is learning a ton about their people. They might generate 1,000 hero points in a month, whereas a company that goes in a couple times, but maybe they generate only a single report or look up a single person each time, they might generate only 20 in a month, right? And so if they're both paying us $1,000 a month, the company that's generating 1,000 hero points is essentially paying $1 for each unit of value, whereas the one that's generating 20 is paying us $50 per unit of value. And it was pretty clear that the companies with a low number that were getting good value were much more likely to renew. And so this is a number that we've brought together. This is one of the key metrics we focus on. And this is something that every single person is now aware of and trying to move. And so pulling it together in one place is really helpful. But what's really made it actionable, I think, for us in our organization is by attaching this company data everywhere. So any data set that has a company ID column, we're attaching this here so that instead of just being in Salesforce and looking at the Salesforce-related company columns, we're able to take product-related data and take product data and filter it by things like headcount and company size, stuff that we're getting out of Salesforce and vice versa. I mentioned blends here, but we do this, via all the different types of data flows. And by attaching it everywhere, it means that people are really able to go in and self-serve, right? That's been one of our big goals, is how can we get more and more people not only looking at the cards themselves, but applying a filter, starting to ask questions. And by building this single data vocabulary, this single way of talking about our companies, our clients, we've been able to get a lot more people asking these types of questions in Domo. So how does this actually look in practice? How does building this look? So this is what the data flow used to look like, and I actually cleaned this up quite a bit. So it's pretty gross, right? I started out with this idea, and people pretty soon began to realize that it was really valuable to be able to take these these pieces of information from across the business and ask questions. But as I started tacking on more and more pieces of data, more and more data flows, more and more inputs, it became really, really unwieldy. And for something that underpins so much of our use in Domo, it wasn't really feasible for it to be breaking all the time, right? So we've waved a magic wand and turned it into this. Not quite that easily, but I appreciate the laugh. There's a couple of things we did to really simplify that I want to share, because I think if you're going to try something like this, hopefully you can learn from our mistakes. And so one of them was, instead of doing all the calculations in one data set where one person basically has to manage it, we've broken it down into a couple different pieces. So for example, I'm really familiar with all of our product systems, all of our product data. And so I can be responsible for pulling together all the product-related metrics, all the product-related fields in one place, and then just pass them on in here. Whereas someone else who's really familiar with Salesforce knows that like the back of their hand, can go in and pull the Salesforce metrics together. That way, all they have to do is provide them here. We go in and use that select step and pipe them all the way through. There's a couple calculations and a few more things, but it has really separated the work out so we can have multiple people working on this at once, and made it a lot easier to use. Another thing that has been really helpful for us is using the scripting block. So while there's obviously a lot of really powerful data science things you can do using the R and Python scripts, what we've also found is that in a lot of cases where ETL flows can get really, really unwieldy, especially if you're doing sort of iterative things or trying to put things into buckets, that using a simple R script or Python script can bring things can condense things in a lot of ways. So those are two things that have been very key for us. And all these things that we're trying to do are in the aim of getting people across the business speaking the same language, right? When I know I'm doing a good job is when I'm sitting in on a Scrum meeting with our engineering team and I hear them asking questions about, have these people looking at metrics about a feature and saying, how does their workshop attendance affect this, right? When people are in different functions in the business are starting to ask questions and are able to go in and answer those questions for themselves, that's been really, really helpful for us. When I first got into Domo, I had the experience of looking at all these different systems, and I think I counted 7 different terms for a company, right? When a company hits our marketing site, they're a prospect, then a lead, then an opportunity, then an account, then a client, then a company, right? All these different things. So it was really, really hard, even if people wanted to have these cross-departmental conversations, it was pretty hard because literally the terms were different. So by pulling everything together, having all of our metrics that are important for us across the business in one place, we're able to have more and more kind of holistic conversations. So another place that we've taken this idea and tried to replicate that story idea is what we call the general company info page. And so this is a single page in Domo that has probably 2 or 3 dozen cards. You see the top row here. And if you don't apply a filter to it, it's absolutely useless, right? All of these cards are built so that once you apply a company filter, they come alive. And remember that since every data set or all of our important data sets have our company data set attached to it, we only have to apply one filter on one field and it'll attach to all the cards. And so what we've done here is, starting at the top, as basic as possible, we've put the first 4 are literally just beast modes that concatenate text around specific field names, so that somebody on their very first day, they could be maybe sitting in on a client call and they want to know about them. They can come to this page and they're literally getting plain English about what the company is, how long they've been a client, their headcount, what industry, things like that. As you dig further down this page, obviously you get a little bit more, but this is something that people can use, whether you're a client success manager or product manager, anybody in our business can get this kind of full story. And this is, I think, where we've come the closest to replicating that experience of that I had of having that full story, right? We try to put everything you could want to know here so that when you're having a conversation or an interaction with a client, it's really, really easy to understand where they're coming from. Now, this just being able to come here is helpful, but we want people always having this available to them. So another thing that we've done in that old data flow is take advantage of Domo's query string page filtering. So who here has played with this at all? Anybody? Oh, okay, wow. So Domo allows you, this is something that I didn't know necessarily until a couple months ago, but Domo allows you to pass page filters to a page via the URL as a query string. And so what this does is we can put together it looks a little, we did this in R, you can also do it in a beast mode, but you can put together a filter in the URL so that when you load a page with a specific filter, you can look at that company. So every single row, every single company row has a URL that takes them to that company page with all their data laid out for them. So that means that when somebody say I'm a product manager and I'm digging into feature use. We rolled out a new feature and I see one company has jumped all over it. And I'm like, that's interesting. I wonder why that is, right? I dig down to that bottom layer. Since we've attached this data set everywhere, that link is right there for me. So I dig down to the bottom data level, I click on that link, and I'm looking at their full story, right? We have in Slack, we have any feedback we get in the software gets piped into a Slack channel. And at the bottom of each message, we have a link to this page. So for example, we get a message saying, oh man, this software is so confusing. I don't know, this isn't what it used to look like. I click on that link and I can realize that's a customer that's been with us for maybe 20 years and they've only logged in twice in the last 3 months, right? And so we've rolled out a bunch of features. It makes sense that they're a little bit confused, right? This is just one of the examples of how we've tried to put that full story, all of that data in as many places as possible so that as many people, somebody doesn't need to know how to make a card or make a data flow, and they can come in and get that information given to them in a way that makes sense for them. So when I was putting this presentation together, I talked to a bunch of people in our organization about how Domo had helped them, what they got. And so this is a couple quotes I got from Sarah that I think really speak to what makes me excited about what we're doing, which is the ideas about customization, right? Defining, tailoring your goals, being able to give direction, right? Every time, in a lot of ways, it relates to, I think, how we think about the value of our product, where if you can go into an interaction with somebody knowing a little bit more about them, that interaction's you're gonna be able to, talk to them in a way that works for them, and you're both gonna gain a lot out of it. And I think Domo has allowed us to go into all of our interactions with our customers with that same level of information and get a lot more out of it. So this chart, I think, is meant to show the idea of how this builds sort of institutional knowledge. I've talked a lot about the different silos, and the way that Domo lets you pipe in all the information constantly, you're able to basically automatically write this story, right? When somebody enters hits our marketing site, we start keeping track of them, and if they stick with us, we're taking that, that first form they filled out saying what their problems are. We can write that on. We can attach any information from the sales funnel through onboarding, through training, through product. And the reason I've drawn the pink circles like that is because each interaction we're gaining information, but we learn about them before we talk to them, but then we're able to get better information out. Like, for example, our user experience researcher, if she's talking to somebody, if she looks at this, she gets their backstory, she goes in and talks with them, that feedback she's getting is even more valuable, which she can then fill in whatever system she's using, and we can pipe back in. So this makes it really easy. Again, we have this single kind of data vocabulary. It makes it a lot easier when we're onboarding new people. They can come in, there's a couple key places, there's a couple key metrics they need to know, and it becomes a lot quicker to bring new people into the fold. So just to kind of wrap up, I want to give a little bit of an example of how this looks in practice, how we're really thinking about our full elephants and how we're affecting them, our full clients, how we're affecting them across all of our different business functions. And this example that I'm giving is one of the key things we've wondered about for a long time. So we've always known that, or we've kind of anecdotally known, we've always heard when a lot of clients churn, they'll tell us, oh, we're just using you as a hiring tool, right? And we're not going to hire this year. And so we were trying to figure out, okay, how can we, there's value post-hire. There's a lot of things you can do for team building and coaching and things like that. And everybody can theoretically always gain value from that. So we wanted to be able to key in on the people who were maybe not weren't using that full breadth of the product and hadn't brought the people data in to use that full breadth of the product. And so this was the question we were asking. And the number we were after was, how much of their headcount was assessed. And so initially we went right to the software to see, we let people tag people in their system as employees or candidates or other types. And so we were going to look for this. And the numbers seemed really low. In a lot of cases, they just didn't pass the sniff test. And the reason for this is that people do not like keeping their data tidy. Who here has their inbox at 0 right now? All right, so yeah, nobody likes to keep their data tidy, and this goes here as well. So the way that we started to solve this problem was by we took the information we could get from the software, right? We took people who were tagged as employees, but then we also combined that with, we looked at their server, their email domain, right? So if somebody works, if we're looking at Acme Corp and we see somebody who's tagged as unknown, who doesn't have a type, isn't specifically an employee, but their email address is at Acme Corp, we made the educated guess that they probably work there. And by pulling that together, kind of combining these two different systems, we were able to get a number that was much, passed the smell test a lot more, and that was actually far more predictive of churn, that a company that had assessed even 25% of their employees was 3 times less likely to churn than a company that hadn't at all, because they were able to use all of these other tools. And once we'd come up with this metric, we'd slid it into our company metadata set, we were distributing it around the organization, people knew what this was, knew what to focus on, then every single different function in our company can start trying to push on that lever in their different way, right? Everybody knows what it is. They can look at it on an individual company level. They can look at it on a more broad scale. And so marketing can start, okay, we need to push out more materials that are emphasizing the things we can do post-hire, right? Sales is demoing more of those features. Client success is introducing more things that people can do. And product is building, removing some of the artificial barriers, making it easier to tag people, and then building new tools that take advantage of that. And so at the end of the day, that's kind of the last takeaway, is that for us, being able to, improve the knowledge, being able to, and when I say knowledge, I don't just mean necessarily what I know as a data person, as a person in Domo, I mean what our company knows, right? Because it's very easy for us, and I say us, like the people who are putting together these data flows, to think that we know everything, but we're not the people who are out there actually doing the work. And so what's really, really important is being able to push it out to as many people as possible. So when we have that knowledge out, when it's distributed, and when our communication is better, that is what has really led to success for us and to happier customers. So I guess my takeaway for you all as you continue to, if you want to try to do some of these things, I think is to look at your instance and say, are we able to construct this? Have we been able to put together a full story of our clients? And if not, maybe think about doing that. If you have, are people speaking the same language? Maybe we have it all in one place, but can somebody in one part of the business talk about, are there metrics that they can talk about with somebody in a completely other sphere? And then, are we actually using this to communicate with our customers? Are we actually improving our interactions with them in a way that's actually leading to happier customers. Because at the end of the day, this is what we're looking for: our happy elephants and happy customers. That's all I have for now. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
When you were talking about the customer unique ID, were you using the Salesforce ID, or did you go to a golden ID? Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So the question was, are we using a Salesforce ID or a golden overall ID? And so for us, the way that our business is set up, and so this was a question I was kind of expecting. We have our sort of software system ID, and then because our software interfaces with Salesforce, we also have the Salesforce ID in our software database. So we have two different ID systems, and so we've kind of zipped everything either to one or the other. So we have both, all of the relevant IDs in that one data set. Yeah, in the back.
How would you get everybody together to collaborate to choose what gets scored and what doesn't?
To get what gets scored. In terms of what I was talking about with the
heroes?
Yeah. So we talked a lot with that one. It's kind of an evolving process. So we did some kind of analysis just of which features people are using that are churning and which stuff is leading to renewal. We talked a lot with our clients. We've talked a lot internally. And so it's sort of an evolving process, but it's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of qualitative and a little bit of quantitative. Yeah.
Where can I find an example of that, the query string page filter?
Oh yeah. So I'm trying to remember the exact thing. So there is a beast mode article in the dojo in the knowledge base that has it sort of down towards the bottom. I think it's in the miscellaneous. But if you search URL query string Domo, it should be in there. I don't know how we get it out, but it's in. I don't know.
Turn this on. All the presentation material will be available after the conference, as well as recorded sessions.
Yeah, and if you have specific questions, feel free. I don't have my contact info on here, but I believe it's somewhere in the program or something. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever if you have specific questions. Yep, in the front.
What would you say is the percentage difference between before and after using Domo to make this? How much of a change has it made in your company?
So I started right as we got Domo, so it would be hard for me to make a real judgment. I think the amount of I think if you ask some of our executives, I think that it would be, night and day. I think the conversations that we've been having, or that we used to have, were a lot more kind of based on hunch, based on experience, and now we're able to kind of put the two together. So I think it is kind of a night and day difference. Anybody else? Alrighty.
Okay, thank you everyone, and please thank Lion.